Don't believe everything you think. Why your thinking is the beginning and end of suffering. Chapter 4, Thoughts versus Thinking. Stop thinking and end your problems. Lao Tzu. Thoughts are the energetic mental raw materials we use to create everything in the world. It's important to know that thoughts are a noun and aren't something that we do, but something we have. A thought takes no effort or force on our end, and it is something that just happens. We also cannot control what the thoughts pop into our minds. The source of our thoughts comes from something beyond our minds, the universe, if you will. Thinking, on the other hand, is the act of thinking about our thoughts. This takes a significant amount of energy, effort, and willpower, which is a finite resource. Thinking is actively engaging with the thoughts in your mind. You don't have to engage with each thought in your mind, but when you do, that is thinking. Thinking is the root cause of all our psychological suffering. Now, you might wonder, where do positive thoughts fit into the picture? Positive thoughts, or thoughts that feel good, do not result from thinking. They are instead generated by our natural state of peace, love, and joy. They are a byproduct of a state of being, not a state of thinking. We will go into depth about this in the next chapter. For now, let's do a quick thought experiment. I will ask you a question, and all you need to do is be aware of what you are experiencing, and we will review what happened afterward. What is the dream amount of money you want to make in a year? I will read that again. What is the dream amount of money you want to make in a year? Pause here and wait for an answer to surface. Give yourself about 30 to 60 seconds to think about your answer to how much money you want to make in a year. Don't move on to the next step until you have had a decently sized train of thought about how much you want to make. Now, take that amount and multiply that by 5. What do you think about this new dream goal for your income when we multiply it by 5? Take at least another 30 to 60 seconds to become aware of your feelings. When you think about them, and see what other thinking comes up for you as you feel your emotions. Don't move until you have done the above. Okay, let's bring it back in and review what happened. After I asked the first question about the dream amount of money you want to make per year, an answer popped into your mind within a few seconds. That is a thought. Notice how quickly and effortlessly that came to you. After an answer popped into your mind, I asked you to think about your answer. What happened once I asked you to think about your answer? If you are like most people, you probably went on a wild roller coaster once you began thinking about the thought. You might have been thinking how there's no way you can make that much. No one in your family is making that much money. You don't know how to make that much. It's stupid to want that much money, or that it makes you greedy. I have to take a pause here and say that obviously not everybody is going to think like that. There are some people like myself who close our eyes, multiply the amount of money, and are very okay and sure with the fact that we can make that money and we will make that money. In the same way, there are different types of people that will be listening to this. Some people are ready to make that amount, and some people are just starting their journey. And so be compassionate with yourself. Be patient with yourself. Let's continue. Notice how you felt when you were thinking about those thoughts. Most likely it didn't feel that great, but that is okay. And I'll show you what you can do about it soon. This is a prime example of thoughts versus thinking. If I ask you a question, you will 100% have a thought that pops into your mind. Thoughts are not inherently bad. They are intrinsically, my R's don't roll. They are intrinsically neutral. The moment we think about our thoughts is when we begin to get taken on an emotional roller coaster. When we think about our thoughts, we begin to judge and criticize the thoughts and experience all sorts of internal emotional turmoil. When I asked you how much you wanted to make, you had a thought about the amount. That thought was neutral and didn't cause any emotional toil. You might have felt expansive and excited. It was only when you began thinking about that thought of how much you wanted to make, which is what caused the self-doubt, unworthiness, anxiety, anger, guilt, or any other emotion you may have experienced. This is what I mean by thinking is the root of our suffering. The initial thought of how much you wanted to make didn't cause any suffering until you began thinking about the thought of how much you wanted to make. It is not necessary to think about our thoughts or to judge them. It does us no good to do so. We may think that thinking is helping us, but all it's doing is causing us to feel all these negative, unwanted emotions and making us create reasons why we can't do it or why we shouldn't want it. The only useful and helpful thing was the initial thought that popped into your mind when I first asked how much you wanted to make. All of the thinking that happened after was destructive and unhelpful. Thoughts create. Thinking destroys. The reason thinking destroys is because as soon as we begin to think about the thoughts, we cast our own limiting beliefs, judgments, criticisms, programming, and conditioning onto the thought, thinking of infinite reasons as to why we can't do it and why we can't have it. Without thinking, we prevent all negative programming and judgments from tarnishing the initial thought of what you want to create. If I ask you, what are some ways you could make the amount of money you want? If you sat there long enough, you will experience the same phenomenon of having random thoughts pop into your head of ways you could make it happen. There are thoughts of creation. Thoughts have the qualities of being infinite and expansive and feel energetically aligned with you. You will know you have thoughts from the divine when you feel positive emotions, lighter and alive. As soon as you begin thinking about those thoughts of the ways you can make the money you want, you will immediately feel heavy, restricted, and limited, along with a whole onslaught of negative emotions. This is how you will know if you are thinking. I use my feelings as an internal radar that tells me whether I am getting direct downloads of thoughts from the universe or if I am in my head thinking about my thoughts. You can only ever feel what you are thinking. So feelings and emotions are like an intuitive internal dashboard that tells me if I am overthinking. If I have many negative emotions, I know I am thinking too much. This is another example of how we are naturally built for success. On the next page is a chart that compares thinking versus thoughts to help you identify which one is which within your mind. It is helpful to go through a few examples of thoughts in your mind and use the chart to identify if it's an actual thought or if it's just thinking.